Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just a brief housekeeping announcement. From 5 p.m., we will begin the Citizens Forum on Nodeul Global Art Island competition. I would like to ask that all of you please take your seats. I would also like to ask you that you please turn off your cell phones or turn them to silent mode. We have about 2 hours scheduled, so we'd like to ask for your cooperation. Also, please make use of the interpretation receiver. Channel number 1 is Korean, and we are providing English at channel number 2. And please make sure you return the receiver before you leave. So, from 5 p.m., we will begin with the public forum. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, from 5 p.m. we will begin the Citizens Forum on Nodeul Global Art Island competition. It will be a quite lengthy forum today. I would like to ask that you please remain seated until the very end, and would also like to ask for your cooperation. Please turn off your cell phones and turn them to silent mode. You would have received the translation receiver. Channel number 1 is Korean, and we're providing English at channel number 2. Would like to also ask that you please return them before you leave. We will begin at 5 p.m. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will shortly begin the Citizens Forum on Nodeul Global Art Island competition. Please be seated. Once again, I would like to ask for your cooperation. Please either turn off your cell phone or turn them to silent mode. Please be seated until the very end of the program. And please make use of the interpretation receiver. Channel number 1 is Korean, and we're providing English through channel 2. And please make sure you return the receiver before you leave. We will begin shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, once the dignitaries enter the hall, we will begin with today's global public forum. This is a citizens forum on the Nodeul Global Art Island competition. We have a quite lengthy program today. I would like to ask that you please either turn off your cell phones or turn them to silent mode. Once again, we're providing simultaneous interpretation. Channel 1 is Korean and Channel 2 is English. And before you leave, make sure you return the translation receiver. We will begin shortly, so bear with us one moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we will start now with the Citizens Forum and Nodeul Global Art Island competition. Good afternoon. I am Yu Chae-rin. I'm the Master of Ceremonies from Seoul Metropolitan Government. I'm sure you are aware, but we are here today to showcase the design and planning of Nodeul Global Art Island. I think it was a couple of days ago where, as part of the first Urbanism and Architectural Design Innovation Initiative, Nodeul Island has been selected. And in order to transform Nodeul into a global art island, we have invited renowned architects. And we also invite your feedback on the designs of the architects who've been part of this competition. Allow me to just briefly walk you through the program today. We will first begin with the progress report, which will be followed by the welcome remarks by the mayor and congratulatory message from the chairman of the SMC. And then we will introduce the architects joining in the competition. We will have a photo op session, and after the opening, we will move on to session 1, during which 4 teams will present. There will then be a break, followed by 3 presentations during the second session. It's a quite lengthy program. I would like to ask for your participation up until the very end. We will wrap today's program and end with a Q&A and a discussion session at the very end. Before we begin, allow me to introduce the VIPs. When your names are called, please rise from your seats and I ask for your applause. First and foremost, we have Mayor Oh Se-eun from Seoul Metropolitan Government. We also have the chairperson from the Seoul Metropolitan Government Council, also from SMC's Policy Committee, Yong-ho Kim, and SMC's Committee on Housing and Space Vice Chair. We have with us Vice Chair Kim Tae-soo. We also have Bong Jun Lee, who is the member of the Committee on Housing and Space at SMC. Due to the time constraint, I will not be able to introduce all of the dignitaries joining us today. We have many people today in this hall, and on behalf of everyone, I extend my gratitude. Now let us begin with the program. Next item is on the progress report on the Nodeul Global Art Island, the first pilot project under Seoul's initiative on urbanism and architectural innovation, which will be presented by Kim Chang-gyu, who is the Director of Urban Space Planning. Please welcome him with a warm round of applause. Yes, good afternoon. I am Kim Chang-gyu, in charge of Urban Space Planning. I will report on the progress of the Nodeul Global Art Island. Nodeul Island, this is as of 2019. It's located in 119,000 square meters. There are small performance stage, library, and Nodeul Square, which have been in operation since 2019. But according to the citizen survey, there was a need to reconfigure the space due to lack of uniqueness in content and for better exterior look and accessibility. Since February, under the objective of making Seoul into a leading global city of urban architecture design, Seoul City announced the Design Innovation Plan, Design First and Business Plan later, based on which design was finalized with business plans conformed, adopting a new architectural administrative system. And Nodeul Global Art Island is the first pilot program of such initiative. Today's presentation is part of the design competition, but we will not be selecting the final winner. Now, design competition began from November of last year. We have invited 7 innovative architects from both Korea and abroad. Now, there are 6 overarching themes and original ideas of the architects, including design of access route, making it an artistic experience in and of itself, observatory offering the view of the sunset, performance stage bordering on the waterfront, and many more ways to access and enjoy the waterfront. Today's forum is a venue whereby we will be explaining these different ideas. We will go through the feedback process and public forum process so that we can come up with a beautiful island. Please, warm applause for the presentation. Thank you very much for the progress report. It was succinct but impactful. Nodeul Island, to make it into a global art island, we still have more stages that we need to go through. We have the architect who will be making the presentation, and based on that information, we will gain your feedback. Next, we would like to invite Mayor Oh for his welcoming remarks. Please welcome him with a warm round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending our forum, and welcome especially to the citizens of Seoul. Thank you for your interest. I know we have many architects and many students of architecture who are here today, and also many experts on Nodeul Island who are here today. Thank you so much for your interest. And I would first like to thank all the participating architects for their innovative and creative design proposals. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your hard work. Kang Il-in from SOA, Na In-jung, Yu So-rae, Shin Seung-soo, Kim Chan-jung, and we also have someone who came from overseas recently, Brian Young from BIG, and Jürgen Meyer and Thomas Heatherwick. Thank you to all our 7 architects. Let's give them a big round of applause to thank them. And I would also like to thank many City Council members who are here despite their busy schedule, and also Council President Kim Yeon-gi for attending our forum. In February, SMG announced its plans for urban architecture and design innovation, and our first project invited Korean and international architects to give us their ideas on how to transform Nodeul Island into a global art island. SMG developed the basic framework outlining all the basic elements that we wanted, and the architects proposed many creative and innovative designs based on our framework. Today we'll be presenting these proposals. Nodeul Island is right at the center of Seoul, but Nodeul Island has not been a very attractive destination for the citizens of Seoul, and accessibility was also an issue. But we want to fill in the gaps, and we want to transform Nodeul Island into an attractive destination, not just an attractive destination in Korea, but we want to transform Nodeul Island into an art island that can attract visitors from overseas. And this is the beginning of Nodeul Island's transformation today at this forum. We want to create Nodeul Island into a cultural and art space that will make the citizens of Seoul happy, and we want to make it into an island that the citizens of Seoul can enjoy. That will be our goal. We will hear the 7 proposals that will be presented by our 7 architects. And after listening to the 7 proposals, you will probably choose your favorite one. And after this forum, we will be having different exhibitions inside Seoul City Hall and at SHUA and even on Nodeul Island to present all of these proposals. And we want to hear from you. We want to get your feedback. We invite criticisms and we invite any opinions that you may have on the proposals. We're not going to choose who the number 1, 2, 3 winners will be here today at this forum, but we want to open our minds and open our imagination so that we can listen to the creative and innovative proposals from all the architects. We can choose one proposal or we can choose several proposals and use them together so that we can create synergy, because we want these ideas to take root and bloom. And in order to do that, and for this to happen, we need your feedback and your opinion. Please evaluate the proposals and think about the proposals so that we can create a work of art on Nodeul Island together, a masterpiece that we can enjoy together. So I have great expectations for this forum. Thank you once again for coming.
Thank you. I think we all have high expectations for the upcoming presentations on the proposals. Without further ado, I would like to invite Chairman of Seoul Metropolitan Council, Kim Hyun-gi, for his congratulatory remarks. Yes, I would have to adjust the microphone before I begin. Good afternoon. Whenever I come up the stage and speak after Mayor Oh, I have to adjust the microphone because he's much taller than me. So that was just on a side note. Good afternoon. I am Kim Hyun-gi, Chairman of Seoul Metropolitan Council. When we say island, we think of the ocean. But in Seoul, in Han River, there are many islands. There's Nodeul Island, there's Seonyu Island, Yeouido Island, and Pam Island. Why is this? It's because Han River is 1 kilometer wide. It is only possible because of this width of the Han River. And this big river has been at the heart of Seoul's or Korea's economic growth. Hence, it is called the miracle of the Han. However, admittedly, we focused too much on preventing the flood, and there were many shortcomings in terms of the accessibility and the content for people to fully enjoy Hangang. To overcome these constraints, Mayor Oh Se-un is doing all he can. Let's take this opportunity to give the mayor a big round of applause for all the hard work he's putting into this. I was at an event at Gangnam, south of the river, and the reason why I rushed to be part of this event is because I wanted to also give my encouragement. I have with me Council Member Kim Hyung-ho and Vice Chair Kim Tae-soo and many other council members with me. And we want to provide our support to Mayor Oh in his initiative to transform the Han River. So I ask for your big applause for the members of our council. Under the Great Han River project, Seoul will transform Han River into a new landmark that will attract its citizens as well as tourists. And all of this is rediscovery of the Han River, and all of this begins with the Nodeul Island. I went to high school at Yongsan District. It was on the so-called Hangang Road. In the past, it was called Chungji Island. Right now, it's called Nodeul Island, but when I was young, I went to that island and I swam near the Nodeul Island. It's been many decades since I graduated from high school. The former Chungji Island and current Nodeul Island is not as vibrant and it is not as accessible and approachable by the citizens. Hence, we need to change this. We need to transform Nodeul Island. And under the helm of Mayor Oh, we are bringing that transformation. I often say that the creator is one who created this world. But I say that the architects are greater than the creator because they make our lives more convenient. If you agree with me, I would ask for you to applaud to that. I believe architects are great. And I look forward to this new Nodeul island that these innovative architects will bring forth. I'm excited to see the future of Nodeul Island through the eyes of the 7 creative and innovative architects. I am excited and I am hopeful. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the architects for accepting the invitation to the competition. Today will be the beginning of a Nodeul Island's new beginning in a new outfit as a landmark attraction that inspires the citizens and the visitors alike. City Council will also do what we can to make sure that Nodeul Art Island and the Great Hangang project can go forward on a smooth sail. Seoul Metropolitan Council would do its part by providing budgetary support and many different types of support. Thank you very much.
Yes, let's give him a big hand. I'd like to thank all the Seoul City Council members and the president also. We are now going to have a photo session, and I would like to invite each of the architects to come out on the stage. First, Mayor Oh and all the participating architects, could you please come out to take a commemorative photo? Please give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to have the forum soon, and I would like to call on each of the architects one by one, and then we will take a picture. First, Professor Kang Ye-rin from Seoul National University and Lee Chae-rin. Let's give them a big hand. Jürgen Meyer, architect Jürgen Meyer, let's give him a big hand. From Nameless Architect Studios, Na Eun-jung, Yu So-rae, let's give them a big round of applause. Brian Yang and Lee Jun-ho from BIG, let's give them a big hand also. Design Group Oz's Shin Sung-soo is here with us also. Let's give him a big hand. Thomas Heatherwick is also here with us. Let's give him a big hand. And from the System Lab, Kim Chan-jung is here with us also. Welcome. We have 7 architects who are on stage now, and it may feel a bit awkward, but we will now take the picture. Please look at the camera, and we will now take a commemorative photo with Mayor Oh Se-hoon. So everybody smile. Let's give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, could you give them a big hand? Thank you very much. I think we're going to take one more picture with the Vice Mayor and the Chief Architect and the City Council President. Could you come up on stage to take a picture also? Could you change the screen, the background screen, so that it can be a little more attractive? And could everybody gather together so that everybody can fit in one picture? Okay, let's give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I would like to invite everyone to return to their seats. Mayor Oh Se-hoon has another schedule, so he cannot stay with us until the end of the forum. And since the mayor has come here despite his busy schedule, let's give him a big hand to bid him goodbye. I think people may think that I'm escaping, but I've already listened to all the proposals for more than 1 hour. So I already know what the proposals are, so three architects who will be presenting. Now we will listen to the proposals given by the architects who have given in their proposals for Nodeul Island. And I'd like to invite Professor Kang Ye-rin from SOA to give the first presentation.
I'm sure she will be very nervous. A warm round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I did not know I was the first presenter, so I'm a bit nervous, but I will begin my presentation on the proposal. So could you please play the video? Our proposal is proposing Nodeul Aqua Palette. This is the basic concept of our design. Now, there is a forest, there is tree, there is water, but there is no good mixture of these different elements. We felt that to be a shortcoming, so we came up with this idea of an aqua palette. So we look at the water, the wood, the sky. These are nature's elements that inhabit this Nodeul Island, and we wanted to mix them together, offering a new open space. So aqua palette is basically the motif that we are working with. There's a Nodeul Island, and at the forest level, we will expand the space, and on the eastern side, we will raise the very tip of that island. And there you look at these elements that look like a stripe, and we link that together with the sandy beach. We link that also with the forest, and we also draw in the water from the Han River. So these are all the elements that come into our design. If you look at this aqua palette, we felt that we could really play with this idea. On the eastern side, we let the water flow. This is a 4-meter elevation. We let the water flow down to the level of the river, to the waterfront. And this water could flow down into the forest, and there's these pallets, the water basins, which will house small pieces of water. And also, we could use the same structure as a walkway, and we could also use this space to further expand on the greenery. So looking closer, you see that there's a water basin, you see the pedestrian walkway, and there's a deck where people could actually sit and rest. All of this coexists. What you could see here is river that's not afar, but it's piece of water that is close to you. It's more up close. And also, there are all these water basins that will help create a space together with the forest. And from the walkway perspective, in the past, you could only access forest from one entrance, but we expand that entrance and that access. And there are all these vegetations and greeneries that is planned. And the Hangang Bridge used to traverse the island. The eastern part of the island was rarely used. So we felt that Aqua Palette would be a good connector that connects between the different spaces. And underneath, you see the boundary, which is cut off with the concrete. And we wanted to try to integrate that into this artificial island. Although this is an artificial island, we felt there is great potential for it to become a naturally formed island. And that is the part that I wish to emphasize. So this looks very different from the original form. It's more expanded. I feel that maybe we may not be able to reach here overnight, but we could go through phases. It used to be a Chungji island, and the sands were removed, and it became an artificial island over the years. Han River, compared to other rivers, have a very wide width of 1 kilometer. And in terms, we feel that Nodeul Island could therefore work with those aspects. And on the northern channel, there is much more shallow depth, water depth, and we could create meandering, and we felt that we could bring about induced natural sedimentation. So not just the Nodeul Island, but if you look at the water edges on the northern part, I felt that there is a potential to build up sedimentation. So not just the Nodeul Island itself, but in relation to its interaction with the Hangang Park that is located on the northern side, we could try to create a connection. So the Hangang water flow, which was more of a direct downfall, we feel that through meandering, we could create a natural water flow. We may not be able to achieve this overnight, but with a starting point, with a small seed, I feel and I believe that we could induce this meandering water flow and eventually move into becoming a naturally formed island. You see the concrete boundaries, and you see the effect of the concrete wall. All of the edges of the Han River have the same level. In 10 years' time, in 15 years' time, I believe that through the sedimentation and ecological recovery, we could see the island edges becoming much more sloped as the time goes by. In line with the imagination of this island growing, it may not actually play out in accordance with our imagination, but with the inducement of the sedimentation and plants and vegetation, I believe with that growth, with that expansion, we could actually grow and expand this space. And this is the Han River, the upper level, upper side. On the western side, we could connect it with the Levy Causeway, and we could eventually meet the Hangang Iron Bridge. Mengkongi Forest, there is a viewpoint platform there, but once you disembark from the bus station, there is the Nodeul Square, and you go through the pedestrian walk, and you would be connected to the Aqua Palette. So you walk through the square, and there's a Nodeul stand, and you take a right turn, and you see this connected route. The existing stand, we want to play with the potential there. And this is like an amphitheater that we could possibly envision. And you could see this from the stand, but you could also have a look out from the existing viewing platform. And we could connect this to the level of the Nodeul Library. In the past, the level seems to be a disconnect. We wanted to depict and find an opportunity whereby we could connect that disconnect. This is a view from the eastern side, and this level is connected to the bridge, pedestrian bridge level. So you will see that compared to the existing bridge pedestrian level, it's more elevated, and there will be a spiral stair down to the forest. So this is an elevated bridge, and you will be able to enjoy the view of the forest. This walkway is then connected to the aqua pilot. We now move to the side of the Han River. It's all connected to the Han River, and the level of the forest as well as the river is very naturally connected. We feel that we will be able to plant flora, and also there will be locations where people could actually sit down and enjoy the view. It is a bit subtle, but there will be multiple layers of levels. There will be this deck and also viewing platform, which is more or less flat in terms of topology, but because there is a slight difference in the levels, I think because it's multi-layered, people could experience different aspects. And there are these stairs that's vertical that will lead you to the downward, and then you meet the waterfront, and these are the water basins, and the water could show the reflections. In order to then have these reflective properties be shown, then it should be the reinforced glass that should be the bottom of these pallets or the water basins. So if you walk out of the forest, you could either walk around or you could either be seated near the waterfront. Aqua palette that we're envisioning, palette once again is a mixture of different materials, and so during the summertime you will feel the vitality. And during the summertime, if you think about the flood levels, the water levels may arise, and also the picture that you've just seen is a possible picture of the winter. There are 3 meters, 4 meters, and 4.5 meters. These are the pallets. It's precast. We originally thought of smaller modules, but if you look at the scales of these structures, I felt that it would be important for these structures to be more approachable. There are 3 different types. One could be used for pedestrian walkways, and the other type is a slit type where you could flow water through, and there's a planter type as well. You could mix and match these different types of the pallet, the top structures. There will be a 3 meter apart. All of the pallets will be installed 3 meters apart on the same parallel. And when people walk on the walkways, between the pallets, there will be a gap, and also light will be cast underneath that structure. And to the eastern side, where used to be a heliport, we turned that into a courtyard. And this next aspect is, I think, the culmination of our idea. This is from an aqua palette, you're looking out into the sunset. The western sunset is a very popular viewpoint, but now on this far east end, this is a sunset beyond the Mengkongi forest, and I feel that this is one of the key signatures that comprise our proposal. And these are some of the flat plans, the cross sections, and you see that there is a gap and a space in between, and as I've explained previously, and the upper part is more of a tranquility, and below with the sedimentation. And as people would gather, we could think of different programs that could bring people together. In the past, waterfront and the water edges are considered to be more linear, but now this will develop into a space where abundant programs can be housed. Aqua palette has the characteristics of palette, and here also it has the role of shutting off or blocking or casting shadow. In an open space, there will not be any shade, but these palettes will work as a medium of providing shade. And below there's this pedestrian walk, and it is connected to a terrace that will look towards the Yongsan district. So after you go through the Yongsan View Terrace, you come to this area. and we extend the sensualities, and also with more sedimentation and with more expansion into the levee, I believe that we will be able to walk towards this other extended areas. So on an island, and inducing sedimentation and naturally formed water flows, I believe will provide a new type of experience to visitors who come to the island.
This was the first presentation, but it was so inspiring, and I'd like to thank Professor Kang Ye-rin for her innovative and creative proposal. Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, architect Jürgen Meyer. Could you please come up to the stage? Let's give him a big hand.
Thank you very much for the invitation to think about the future of Seoul with the island Nodeul as an art location and a cultural place with international radiance. I would like to start to present our project with the video, which is about 10 minutes, and then we go through the presentation to repeat some of the points.
동영상을 먼저 보여드리고 제가 발표하겠습니다. 동영상 먼저 같이 보겠습니다.
Can we start the video?
동영상 틀어주세요.
And the sound, please.
소리도 키워주세요. 노들 예술섬. 노들섬은 서울 도심의 새로운 공공 문화 공간이 될 것입니다. 자연과 예술, 특별한 레저 경험은 혁신을 증진시키고 다양한 커뮤니티를 유입해서 서울시의 일상에 활기를 주고 건축과 소통과 신기술의 교차점에서 혁신의 박차를 가하게 될 것입니다. 기존 캠퍼스가 노들 예술섬의 기반이 될 것입니다. 문화공간, 사무실, 책방과 다목적 홀이 밀집되어 있는 공간으로서 섬의 미래 개발의 기반을 조성합니다. 기존 허브를 확장해서 노들섬의 생태계를 건축물과 통합해주는 새로운 문화센터를 조성하는 것이 저희 목표입니다.
Nodeul Art Island is a vibrant and innovative cultural center that offers a unique and dynamic environment for the city of Seoul. It is designed to be a participatory and community-driven space where each intervention can be built independently in shorter steps within a given time frame and set of stakeholders. The island's design features a range of atmospheres and identities, including fire, air, earth, and water, that create a solid framework for a variety of designs and programs. Nodeul Art Island is a testament to the power of collaboration and community-involved design. It is a place where culture and nature intersect. With its flexible and adaptable design, the island is poised to continue evolving and changing over time, providing a space for new and innovative interventions to take place and inspiring people to come together to create something truly remarkable.
네, 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
I think that deserves a big round of applause. I was completely mesmerized by the video. I'm not sure I understood everything, but it's a space where we have an open view of nature.
Presentation quickly if we have time.
네, 이어서 PPT가 이어진다고 합니다. 영상 보고 나서 PPT.
Yes.
So don't worry. I'm going through some of the points again to explain them, but I think it's also important to introduce the team that we created with, because it's always, of course, a collaborative approach. We need a lot of intelligence from many people, and of course, the first ideas come from you, from the city, to really see the city, the island as a new motor for innovation and also for city life and urban life here in Seoul. So we work together with Moon Architect as our local partner to input, to feedback our ideas. We worked with Werner Sobeck as our engineers for sustainability and structural engineering. We had help from CIG, Central Industry Group, for also cost estimation and also for the structural parts in steel. And of course, we had help from visualization and for the animations from Bloom Images Berlin and Morian also from Berlin. So I think that's important to show that all this work came together in the video and also the work that you see for our proposal. What is one of the key elements, of course, is the connection between the city and the riverbanks and the islands. So for us, it was important to really start already on the riverbanks with our activities and introduce elements from the island already there to invite you, to have the island experience already, at the very beginning when you enter onto the river landscape. So this is why the bridges are not only bridges, but they already contain parts of the design and of the spatial and programmatic innovations that you then see on the island itself. So basically, it's the island reaching out or the banks reaching towards the island to create this more intense network and connection. Then the other part, which was important for us, is that we create different experiences, that there is a reason and a curiosity created that you always want to walk from one end to the other end, because there are completely different spaces and different atmospheres that you can experience. And the atmospheres are based on the 4 elements that are also, of course, embedded in the Korean culture and the flag as fire, heaven, earth, and water. And of course, also in our German culture, the 4 elements are really kind of important for defining placemaking and to create a certain sense of belonging. So we use these elements to interpret them in an innovative new experience and way, also in terms of architectural typologies. So from the west to the east, or from the east to the west, you will have a water landscape, you will have a mountain landscape, which is the forest, you will have an air landscape, which is the cloud that you can go underneath and go up and be inside. And then we have the fire element that's towards the sunset to the west. I'm just going quickly through the different elements that you have already seen in the movie. So this is the stage set, or the stage that faces the west. So of course sunset and evening concerts and performances will be the place and the moment of when this is kind of the most active part of the day. We have this in connection with the air element that you see as the next one, which is this floating cloud kind of really, being up there. The circular elements like little tornadoes that you can walk up or come down. And once you're up there, it's another world where temporary art interventions and happenings and festivals can take place, from everything from sound elements to performances to, of course, sculptures and also light sculptures at night, light art. Here you see the bridge in the foreground on your way to the island. The mountains will be also scaffoldings grown with a lot of greenery, similar to the mountains around Seoul, where also the green mountain is actually something different and unique than maybe in the Alps or in high mountains where it's just the stone, ice, and rocks. So here it's really a kind of a walk into the green, lush vegetation of the forest. Some parts will be, of course, climbing walls, but also others have viewing platforms, steps that you can go up. So really experience the different heights going up and down. And of course, to understand animals, vegetation as part of environment and connectivity to nature that is really important for our survival that you can experience there. Then water is an important element. In the east side, we have a water tower that you can also go up that has exhibition spaces inside and maybe also a cafe or restaurant. But it's also important to introduce ways to really get close to the water again, maybe have floating swimming pools in there, use the water as an element to enjoy your day on the river and on Nodeul Art Island. So this is more of a sports activity, maybe, body, art, movement, culture, while the other parts are more related to maybe more classical forms of art performance and interventions of, let's say, theater or speech, talking, and concerts. So these are some final views of the different layers, the water landscape, which is the close connection to the river. Then we have, of course, the elevated parts where vegetation is important. So we looked into sustainability issues, ecology, also which parts can be used for creating energy that helps to supply the working forces that we need on the island. And some final images from closing up with the views again of the spatial experiences that you can have on the island. Thank you very much.
네, 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think that would be a good embodiment of nature. I look forward to that transformation of Nodeul Island. Without further ado, I would like to now invite architect Na Eun-jung from Nameless Architecture for their presentation.
저희는 2년 전에
2 years ago, 2021, we started off crafting a art piece for the Nodeul Island, and starting springtime for about 5 to 6 months, we've spent quite some time on the Nodeul Island. At the time, we observed the changes in the season and variety of experiences depending on the timing of the day. There was Han River that sparkled, there was wind, and also cloud up on the air. While observing all these changing environment, I felt that Nodeul Island was a place where we could truly experience different aspects of Seoul as a city. But despite such potential, Nodeul Island was not a vitalized location. I was hoping that Seoulites will come to Nodeul Island really enjoying the vast amount of experience that it can provide. So allow me to start my presentation. Nodeul Island is situated geographically at the center of Seoul, and in the beginning it was not an island but a stretch of sand and pebbles extending out from the neighborhood of the Icheon-dong. In the summer, people swam and sunbathed in the sand beach, and during the wintertime, people came to skate on the ice. Such memories and remnants are very important lead in the way we envision the future of Nodeul Island, and it will be a link between the past, present, and the future. The name Nodeul means stepping stones, upon which white egrets played. The new Nodeul Island begins from this very long-held origin of the name. We present stepping stone of culture and art, harboring the history of the land, whereby Seoulites can take a leisurely stroll. Stepping stones as a medium, it expresses island's identity and embodies cultural and playful potential of Seoul, and by doing away with the rigid boundaries along the island, diverse experience will be housed in its naturally formed waterfront. The journey through the 9 stepping stones expands into the waterfront, constrained by no boundaries. Nodeul Island will go through 4 processes. Process 1 transforms the island edges into a naturally formed waterfront. Second, sunset garden, swimming pool, floating stage, and the promenade are planned along the waterfront. And third, hills and flat land create dimensional surfaces. Lastly, the skywalk connects, the sky trail connects to the stepping stones, which are the vessels of culture, offering colorful experiences. What you see here is a pictorial drawing. Now, for this special journey into the Nodeul Island, there is a visitor center right in the middle where we place aerial tram station on the upper structure approaching from the Icheon Park and the UAM City Station. We also build a new pedestrian bridge. In the middle of the bridge, connected to Yongsan, is a floating pavilion island, which will become a symbolic place of the art island, as it will be a venue for global architects and artists' art pavilion every year. Upon this dimensional terrain, from the western end, we will have sunset watch point, amphitheaters, visitor centers, multipurpose stage, creative center, vertical garden, and Hangang Ecotourism Center, which are cultural stepping stones, all connecting into the vertical walkway. Now, this is an image view from the west of Han River. Highly dense city and ecological waterfront right at the center of the Han River, natural hills and spatial experience of the art island will bring special encounters in our everyday lives. This is a view from the Riverside Road towards the floating, dimensional, and cultural stepping stones. Detailed planning comprises of 3 levels, which are waterfront, ground, and upper levels. First is open waterfront. Concrete revetment and high flood walls are removed, and it's replaced by 30-centimeter layers sloping downwards towards the river, naturally giving visitors access to the Han River. This enables access to the sandy beach, waterfront promenade, and sunset stage, and the wharf. First floor of the building in the west will be used as parking space and for amenities. This is the view of the swimming pool with a restored sandy beach. You see the downward slope naturally connecting with the sandy beach, creating an infinity pool with Seoul's cityscape as its backdrop. Dynamic ground, this is a plan for the ground level. This is the ground plan. Now, ground level provides a main access through the Hangang Bridge and the pedestrian bridge. Eastern side is flat, preserving the current topography and the trees, while the terrain on the west side is hilly, representing the dynamic movement of the earth. You see landscapes changing in sync with the changes of earth and the waterfront. It houses various different movements of the topography where play, outdoor performance, promenade, rest, culture, and leisure all take place. This is a 3D plan from the vantage point of the walkway. From the hills of the ground on the right, there is a natural slope downwards towards the waterfront, and you will see the flow of the land, the movement of the land, and a promenade walk in between. This is a plan for the upper level of the stepping stone. So this is a plan of the upper structure. There are 9 stepping stones, which will be a vessel for culture, art, and nature. We transform the landscape into a multi-layered space, perfecting the symbolism of the island of culture and art. Each stepping stone is planned for different programs, shapes, and sizes. On the superstructure, there are observatory, outdoor theater, visitor center, multipurpose performance hall, creative center, and vertical garden. And underneath, there will be Hangang Eco Park, pier, and sunset performance hall. The stepping stones on top are linked via the sky trails. It will connect the movement of the visitors. Now, this is the sunset lookout on the western side of the island. This lookout offers 360 degrees view of Seoul as one takes a stroll along the spiral encompassing the forest at the center. Now, this is the inside of a performance hall located at the upper center of the island. This hall is not closed, but it is an open space in sync with the rhythm of the surrounding environment. This space can host various forms of cultural events and performances, allowing easy access to art and culture for those taking a leisurely promenade on the island. This is the elevation plan, depicting a dimensional interaction between the sloping hills to the west of the island and the space on top. The plan below is an elevation plan, on top is a ground plan. Now, on the ecological plan, by implementing the ecological plan, we will be restoring the waterfront ecosystem, evenly spreading natural environment which is currently overly situated on the eastern side. The adoption of a vertical garden will give dimension to the greenery, the green space, and the upper part of the structure will be used as a secondary earth, embodying the nature. This is a view from the southwestern skies. Island edge has been blurred with waterfront. Topology is dimensional and there are stepping stones as superstructures. Now this ends my presentation, and I would like to share a short 5-minute video. Video, please. Nodeul Island, situated at the center of Seoul, in the beginning was not an island but a stretch of sandy plain extending out from the neighborhood of Icheondo. As Hangang Bridge was built, flood walls were erected around the island, sand from the island plain removed, with Nodeul taking the shape as a man-made island as we know it today. Remnants of the past become a link between the past and the future. To transform Nodeul Island, we begin the journey from the origin of the name Nodeul, which means stepping stone upon which egrets played. We imagine elegant and playful egrets strolling upon the stepping stones along the waterfront in a breezy day. Stepping stones punctuate the identity as an island and at the same time is a medium of dynamic joy. 9 stones are placed one by one in the Han River. A single line connects each of these stones. Creating a natural boundary along the waterfront, stones laid on Nodeul Island is a vessel for culture, art, and nature, while people walk upon the stepping stones, enjoying the island. Nodeul Island, where egrets played, attracts people just as winds come and go. A day at the new Nodeul Island is filled with nature, play, and art. Early morning, a day begins with a jog along the waterfront with the sounds of birds and flowing water in the backdrop. Rising sun and an open view of the landscapes wake our five senses. Along the skywalk, we take a promenade, experience diversity of our programs, and see Seoul from a new vantage point. At noon, Han River becomes vibrant with silvery sparkles under the sunlight. At the sand beach and swimming pool to the northwest of the island, there are a lot of people leisurely enjoying the day under the day's sun. The waterfront is lined with 30-centimeter layers, which naturally forms the sand beach and the swimming pool, offering Seoul and Han River as a backdrop to a unique swimming experience. From the sandy beach, passing through the space under the hills, you see an open space to the southwest. Looking out into the expansive view of the Han River, people enjoy their picnics with friends and families. In the afternoon, when things may be going slow, a performance has just begun in the multi-purpose theater. It is an open space in the form of an amphitheater where people can easily access and enjoy various cultural events. As the sun comes down, a different experience awaits at the island. You appreciate the cityscape and the crimson skies at sunset. Seoul's cityscape shines more than ever. The observatory is an open, circuit-like structure. At the center are the woods, and as one walks up to the observatory, your experience reaches a peak as one revels the Seoul cityscape, the Han River, and the nature. Night befalls on the Nodeul Island. City is bright with brightly lit buildings, but the river is tranquil. You wind down your day taking a stroll at the Nodeul Island, embraced by soft lights as if lit by a firefly. The pedestrian bridge and the elevated tram will make your journey to Nodeul Island very special, and the constraint of being an island is made into a strength, no longer a weakness. Open waterfront, stepping stones, vessels for cultural and art programs, as well as elevated pedestrian walkways all give dimension to the island. With all this, Nodeul will no longer be a place of passing, but Seoul's landmark destination that everyone wishes to visit.
Let's give them a big hand. Thank you very much. I think we could stay here for the whole day to look at Nodeul Art Island. Next, I would like to introduce Brian Young from Denmark's BIG. Let's give him a big hand.
As you can see, I'm not Bjarke Ingels, nor was I born in 1965. But I have to say, what a privilege to be here. And I think as foreign designers, where there are commonalities, frankly, reassuring in how we've approached the project, and frankly, inspiring where there are differences as well. I need to get this. And the starting point for us has really been to think about the context of Nodeul Island in both the geography and history of Seoul, which really started to the north of the Han River. You can see in this image a kind of clear difference in how both sides of the river developed. This is from the north looking south. Over time and during the occupation period, there was a development of infrastructure that began to connect from north to south, led to the growth of some industry of the river as a kind of economic engine for the city. And as other participants have noticed, that the river at the time was somehow an active part of the daily life of the city. You can see in some of the images a kind of outline of where the island is today, where it very clearly sits as a part of the landmass. Whereas today, the kind of infrastructure for mobility of the city has actually become something that has disconnected the water from the experience of the citizens of Seoul. So just a quick recap of the kind of early days of Seoul, where there was a kind of easy access and unmitigated relationship between water and land, the growth of industrial infrastructure, and the situation today where apartments and largely kind of residential buildings front the river, but where again it's disconnected by the infrastructure of mobility. And somehow in our careers as BIG, we've spent actually quite a lot of time from our very early days looking at projects that break down these barriers and facilitate access between the kind of water and the land, the city, the various parts of infrastructure that make up our daily life. This is an early project we did for a maritime youth house on a brownfield site where a kind of wood decking that covers the shore, the river, the waterfront is lifted to create space for a program, but also becomes a kind of active playscape for the citizens of Copenhagen. This idea was extended also in one of our first projects, a harbor bath in the waterfront of Copenhagen, which becomes an extension of the kind of urban fabric and invites people to enjoy the water. This, of course, didn't happen in isolation, but in tandem with a kind of cleaning up of the water that happened in the late 90s and early 2000s that began to facilitate this access. But what's interesting is that what has resulted is a kind of a reversal of a development model where instead of building residential apartments, for example, on the waterfront, there's an expectation to first build the kind of social infrastructure that allows for people to interact with the water and then to infill with developments later on. So we think that's been a kind of interesting way to think about blurring of the boundaries. And then in Lower Manhattan, we've been working for a number of years now with coastal resiliency to imagine how the city can be protected. This is in the wake of Hurricane Sandy. You can see the kind of the white lines trace the flooded areas of Lower Manhattan, where the idea initially was to build an integrated flood wall that surrounded the entire tip of Lower Manhattan. And we've been thinking about how, instead of it being a traditional flood wall, it can take on the characters of the communities that surround this perimeter, so that in a way it's not just infrastructure, but really becomes an embodiment of the social life of the people who live on the water's edge. So that, for example, a kind of seating berm that wraps around under the West Side Highway might become a piece of infrastructure for resiliency. Similarly, lower down, where you have kind of ramps and landscape that facilitates access to the waterfront, also in other scenarios becomes something that then protects the city fabric that sits behind. So we've been thinking a lot about how infrastructure doesn't necessarily have to be infrastructure, how a waste-to-energy plant can also be a ski slope, a nature hiking trail, a climbing wall in the middle of the city, but also cultural infrastructure as well. I've just flown in from Prague, where we're working on the detailed design for the Vltava Philharmonic Hall. It's along the Vltava River, which is a central artery through the heart of Prague, but where the idea is, instead of creating a cultural palace that is isolated, it actually becomes an extension of the river all the way to the roof, a series of terraces and promenades that create access to the waterfront, but also bring people all the way up to the roof, where they have an incredible view over the cityscape of Prague. So a series of terraces programmed with different types of activities, a democratic space for the people of the city. So the point of that was not actually to sell big projects to anyone here. I think most people are familiar with big in our work, but to say that we think there's a certain approach to thinking about this project that's necessary, whereas architects is not just about design, but it's also about taking the various forces and challenges that shape society to collaborate with the citizens in the society in which we work to create something that ultimately gives back to society. And in this case, reimagining how, instead of an isolated island, we essentially have a park that sits in the middle of a river that can be programmed in different ways so that it becomes an essential part of the social infrastructure of Seoul. So coming back quite specifically to this project, we have a few simple ideas that form the framework for how we've been thinking about it. Essentially, today, mobility to Nodeul Island is limited primarily to transport by bus. We have a proposal initially to think about taking cultural facilities out of the podium and relocating it onto the island itself, freeing up space in the podia to create additional space for parking, additional mobility options so that we can have enhanced connectivity to both the north and south sides of the river, and then essentially to unroll a carpet of continuous social infrastructure along the road, which will create a barrier to both air and noise pollution. It creates a kind of central plaza that can be programmed in different ways, but also allows us to, with the previously compact social program, to place it along the perimeter where you can then enjoy panoramic views of the city on both sides. With this covered plaza, we thought it could then be interesting if this was covered with a kind of performative roof that allows for occupation and use throughout the course of the year. This roof can be extended to become a kind of continuously shaded and covered network between east and west of the island. It has additional benefits in terms of wind protection, solar protection, rain collection, and if we program it with photovoltaic cells, then essentially can become a kind of battery that powers the use of the island. Currently, there is an issue with flooding around the island, where you have a kind of imposing flood wall that surrounds the perimeter. And here we think there's an opportunity to take some of the lessons we've learned in places like Lower Manhattan to imagine the flood protection system not as a series of walls, but perhaps as a series of gently cascading pathways and terraces that lead people down to the waterfront. This also gives opportunity for these spaces to be programmed in different ways so that the island becomes, again, one kind of continuously connected piece of social infrastructure. We then thought maybe it's interesting to imagine how this relates to the context of the city, both to the north and the south. On the south side, the water is deeper and is primarily used for boat traffic. So perhaps there's an opportunity to think about how Nodeul Island plugs into a kind of maritime traffic mobility network. But on the north, where the water depths are much shallower, we thought it could be interesting to think about a restoration of some of the local ecologies and habitats, the creation of a series of wetlands, for example, estuaries. The kind of protected alcove that is created to the north then means that there's a possibility to think about recreating bringing back some of the old uses of this area, the restoration of sandy beaches to the north that gives this kind of very long, linear, shaded place in which to interface with the waterfront. And then we've called the project the Ripple because we've been imagining that almost like a stone dropped in water, it could become the epicenter for a series of ripples that grow into waves that gradually kind of extends and connects and rejuvenates the waterfront of the riverfront of both sides of Seoul. As part of this process, we've been thinking a lot about what this means in terms of not just infrastructure, but also experiences as well. The creation of a series of 12 different destinations that can also be programmed during the course of the day, weeks, months, and years, so that Nodeul Island really genuinely becomes a place of the city that is continuously active. And maybe just to walk you very quickly through how we imagine some of these spaces, starting from the heart of the island with a kind of central plaza surrounded by different types of cultural and art program. We've also been looking a little bit into the existing structural grid and imagining a future where, for example, there's a kind of sustainable timber structural system that's used so that there's a certain flexibility in the layouts. So here are just some examples of how you might begin to aggregate different programs. But as you see here, the intention is to avoid a kind of dogmatic architecture, but really to create a kind of lively space of the people. And then towards the west, where the plaza terminates, the possibility for an incredible event space with the backdrop of the sunset that again might have different characters, uses through the course of the day and the year. We've also looked a little bit at each of the edges then to imagine how each of them can have a different character. Again, from the north edge of the island, which becomes a relatively sheltered alcove, how we might be able to restore some of the old ecologies that used to exist here, and the sandy beach that becomes a kind of social and recreational space daily, how this could perhaps extend into a series of islands connected by a boardwalk and estuaries back to the river's front on the north, towards the center of the island where there's more of a kind of density of flora. We have the kind of forest with perhaps a sort of meandering river canopy top walk. This is actually a project we've done in Sweden for a kind of birdhouse hotel where it has a single room inside where avid birdwatching fans can retreat for the weekend, and where you have homes for all of the kind of resident birds that surround in the perimeter. And maybe the forest then gives way to a series of paddies that surround as you get to the edge of the island. Towards the east edge of the island, where we've been thinking about the kind of restoration of a wetland ecology, where perhaps the island gently dips down and gives way to mudflats, that then again kind of has with a meandering boardwalk that takes you through a series of wetlands. And there we also thought there could be opportunity to think about how that becomes an extension of the daily life of the city through the use of, for example, farmers markets or little gardens where you might grow produce that gets used in some of the cafes or restaurants that are placed on the island. To the west, the kind of garden space where we have a series of undulating hills, small pieces of topography that bring people down and create access to the waterfront, but where the space underneath might be used and populated by different types of activities. And finally, a kind of southern promenade where you have a view of the skyline of the city to the south, but where, again, just as an example of how the kind of topography of the island can be used as part of the resiliency infrastructure, where maybe we create different levels of use depending on the levels of water, so that there's also a certain flexibility to how the kind of island and its architecture engages directly with its adjacent context. So in closing, we essentially propose to take what is an isolated culture facility and disconnected island and to rethink how it can become a kind of continuous landscape of social infrastructure, to transform it from introverted to extroverted, to take advantage of the panoramic views afforded by its central location in the middle of the Han River, but also to make it an iconic landmark for anyone visiting or passing through Seoul. More than just design, though, we think it's important that there's a performative aspect to it, so that it's also about the kind of mobility infrastructure of the city, facilitating access between north and south, micro-mobility solutions. We know that the Han River, for example, is being thought of as a future drone air corridor, where perhaps it becomes a critical stop along that infrastructure, also a part of the infrastructure of water mobility, and then the kind of ecological infrastructure that is needed to restore and regenerate some of the historic flora and fauna that have occupied this part of the Han River. The opportunity then that we see with Nodeul Island is not just limited to the island itself, but to really think again about how it can become an epicenter for a series of ripples that grow into wave and that extend, transform, and rejuvenate the riverfront of Seoul. Thank you.
네, 여러분 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Thank you very much. That was an innovative design idea. Thank you for that. I think a lot of people have seen the imagination and innovation that's behind all of these proposals. So this brings us to the end of session 1. Before we move on to session 2, we will have a short break. At 6:24, we will have a 10-minute coffee break, and we will resume at 6:34.
네, 여러분 10분이
Ladies and gentlemen, please come back to your seats. We would like to begin session 2 of today's program. Once again, would like to ask that you please be seated.
네, 앞에 네 분 발표를 먼저 하고요.
So we've heard 4 presentations. We now have 3 more left, so please be seated.
네, 그럼 지금부터 노들 글로벌 예술섬 디자인
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to resume session 2 of the Citizens Forum on Global Nodeul Art Island. Fourth presentation will be delivered by Shin Sung-soo from design group O's Architects.
반갑습니다.
Good evening. I have a sore throat, so please bear with me. I will spend about 10 minutes going through the PowerPoint slides, and I have about 5-minute video, which I will share at the end. So the first page is introduction. Before we embarked on our design work, there were a couple of aspects that we delved into. The first being, if you look at an urban city, there is a space where people can experience different culture, either standing up or sitting down. And then there's this idea of an island. And an island, in my mind, is a place that shares a boundary with a body of water. And I think it will be fun to have something floating. And you see from this slide that there are these floating trees. There are these designs and these techniques that will allow you to float things on the water, which is quite fun. And I was also thinking that this would be a place where there would be music, theaters, many different types of cultural activities. And as you can see from this slide, there is, for instance, an art pavilion, there's a library, there's a playground. I was envisioning this recreational and creative space, which could work as a cultural terminal. And I want people to discover something unexpected while they are on the move. Just like on Horizon, this will be a place where many different types of experiences will all come together. All these spaces, connecting the spaces, and I was hoping that there would be a space where people could all join in on this experience. So we first started off with the idea that we want Nodeul Island to be in close contact with water. So rather than thinking it as a landmark, we wanted to think about the watermark. And we wanted to make sure that it will not be taller or higher than the Congress building. So it's 8.6 level, so plus 8.6 level. So PM, and there's a bike walk. And then below that level, you see pedestrian walkways. And underneath that level will be a floating bridge, level of the floating bridge. And as I've mentioned at the very beginning, a space where people can very freely spend their time either laying down or standing up. There will be these recreational spaces that will be in close proximity to all of this. So once you enter into the Nodeul Island, this is a indoor. There is for instance, a cliff, and in the center you see this vast opening where you have a view of the river. And right at the center of this facility is an art pavilion that offers a space for various different artistic and cultural activities. So this is a diagram, a plan, and this is the rendering of what I have just explained. And looking deeper on the left side, we are thinking of a water square. In the middle is a forest garden. And these individual spaces you could only access via the art pavilion, and there are multiple art pavilions that actually create and configure the central space. Artist residence, and I think there could also be a camping site, and there could be many villages or many the ideas of islands or different segments where there could be many activities. This is an idea on the bridge. There's a bridge from the Yongsan side and from the Noryangjin side as well. The starting and the ending point of bridges are very important. I am envisioning a big square, like an atrium, and together with the space in the center is all connected. So this idea, I dubbed it Bridged Archipelago. This is not just a single island, but a connected and bridged archipelago. This is an island where people can visit anytime from anywhere. And this is how the island is going to look like. You would know this, so I will skip this first bridge. And what's important to note is that this bridge, it traverses right in the middle, and it connects the northern and the southern part of Seoul. It was also the heart of recreation, even dating to the past. And just as seen from old photos, from summer to winter, there are many different forms of recreation that take place. And this is a center of edge. So this is how it looks like as of today. And what is surprising is that every day 180,000 people actually commute through the Nodeul Island. What's also interesting is the pedestrian walkway as well as the bike route. A lot of people were using these walkways. So how are we going to transform this place? First, in terms of space. Nodeul Island, what we did was we dissected to north, south, east, and west. We want to open up the space just like a valley. So it's open to the river, it's open to the city center. That is the overall terrain and the design that we have in mind. Second, in terms of bridging the time, 365 days a year, we want this place to be accessible and approachable. But the reality is that it's very difficult to engage in outdoor activity for more than 30 minutes because of such a strong wind that blows through. And if there is a very strong wind, higher than 5 millisec, if there's a very strong wind, it's very difficult to engage in outdoor activities. So what's our solution to that? Our solution is making a big atrium. ETFE is going to be the structure used for the rooftop, and on the southern side, we will make use of eco-friendly materials to make eco-friendly hills and valleys. So during the winter time, 365 days, a constant temperature of 12 degrees will be maintained. So this will be a interior, semi-enclosed, or semi-indoor location. So even at wintertime, you may be able to wear a short sleeve when you visit Nodeul Island. Now, in terms of bridging mobility, a lot of people either enjoy walking, or they take vehicles, or they ride bikes. And if you look at Icheon entrance from the Yongsan side, we can build a parking lot here, so people could park their cars, and they could use this bridge to access the Nodeul Island. You could also access this either via boat or via a UAM. And on the bridge side, there's the entrance, as I've mentioned before, and through the art pavilion you can access the spaces in the middle. We could really facilitate different activities on the outer boundary, and with a very strong gravity towards the central part of the island with the pavilion. Connecting and bridging the ecosystem is important. Also, we come close to the water edge. We create a topology, a terrain, as well as vegetation so that a habitat could naturally be formed for flora and fauna. Now then, the floating island and the bridge, these will be some purifying vegetation, which will help with the purification. And at night, the floating island and from the bridge, this will be the view, the image that you would see. Lastly, in terms of bridging the culture, there are many different forms of art pavilion that will surround this island. This is a shared space for people, and within this space, it could be a host of various different events and activities. And these art pavilions can jointly plan and design an exhibition, night at the museum, or various different types of fun events could be planned. And through artist residency program, we're not just going to consume culture, but this will be a place of producing and creating new culture and reproducing those activities. Right in the middle, this is a semi-indoor space. On the left, this is the water, the so-called water square. But what's more important is down below. This is a place where people can easily approach and visit. And so that was what it looks like from inside. And this is just a aerial plan. And now, in the remaining 5 minutes, I would like to just share with you a video that I have brought.
영상 준비되셨어요?
아직 안 끝났습니다.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Warm round of applause. That really accentuated Nodeul Island is a place of culture and art. From Thomas Hedwick, please welcome him with a warm hand.
Thank you very much. It's important to say how weird this is for designers like us in competitions. This never happens. Normally we work alone in our bubbles, and at the end of an ideas competition you never see what your colleagues have done. And so it's really amazing to see the work and the way people present, and so it's been an honor, like a really interesting, just a different way for the city to do a public project thinking. I wanted to first just say that my studio is a team based in London, and this project I'm showing is a collaboration with a group of us. But our passion is thinking about the emotion of how people feel in places that they go to. And so many parts of cities have been built where it feels like they're not thinking about how people will feel. And so for us working on this competition, the beginning for us was trying to think about what are the opportunities for how people from Seoul or visitors or from wider Korea can feel here. If I just go first of all, you've all already become total experts on Nodeul Island and its relationships. The main thing that we found interesting, if I just go back, was that this island was not in the middle of the city. It was at the side, and it wasn't even an island. And then it found itself in the middle of this city. And when we think about beautiful cities with beautiful rivers, we go to Paris, and it's 200 meters wide, and we think it's beautiful. In London, we have a 400-meter wide river, and it divides us. And we very much divide us, like, are you from South London? Are you from North London? And your river's twice that. So it's very profound, and it's empty, and it's like this vacuum. It feels like it's sucking the life out of your city when it's your heart. So it seemed that our job is to somehow glue this city together. And this is an opportunity for a stepping stone, as some of our colleagues have mentioned. And there's this history of ideas. And so what I just wanted to say today particularly was, we work alone, like each of us as teams has worked alone, but the best projects, all the projects that my studio has done that I showed earlier, they're projects, you grow them, and you grow them together with your clients and the residents and everyone in a city, and botanists and geographers and sociologists, everybody. That's how good projects happen. They're not from 8 weeks working by yourself. So what I'm showing today is just really some thinking towards a team and how we would approach collaborating with you on this project. But it seemed there's been this history of ideas, but those ideas end up in a cupboard or in a drawer somewhere. And then there's this underwhelming reality at the moment. And there's such an opportunity for something that could have emotional resonance for everybody. But at the moment, it really feels so ignored and lost. And interestingly, the developments that have happened on the island were based around music. But they feel so underused and unloved. So there's also the real feeling, the proximity to nature in the form of water and planting, but all those concrete retaining walls were not designed with the emotion of the users who would be there. And that's how it feels. There's not the emotion of real nature. So your brief had all these things to do with improving access and connecting with the waterfront. But it was really ambitious, but it felt to us most of all, the island needs an idea. It doesn't need a design, it needs an idea. So people know in their heart what this island is for. And it feels at the moment like an unfinished symphony. It's about music, but it isn't finished. So we think that music is still the key. We shouldn't throw that away. It's too easy for this island to become confused. But before there was going to be an opera house, and an opera house is very elite. You know, there's only one slice of society for whom opera is the thing. So it seemed, could we use music, but music for everybody, to bring everybody together? And there's already this infrastructure in the city of all these musical places. So whether that's recording studios, music halls, performance venues, and it's amazing what's here, but it's invisible. So how could we, in a way, be an amplifier and make a visible, sorry, that doesn't translate well, make visible what is there at the moment? And so could this be a place where you can borrow musical instruments, where there's total silence that you can experience, where there's traditional music, but there's also spaces for body movement and immersive arts and busking. At the moment, where do you go for performances that are informal? There's lots of spaces for things that are formal, but how can we get that energy? When you speak to people in other parts of the world and they talk about soul, they talk about the energy that's underneath, but it feels that it's not optimized and given the platform that it could really have. So how can your techno DJs are incredible, but where are they? How can we give them spaces that really grow them? And world famous K-pop, how can we make that also so visible together? So there's so many aspects that we think we could bring together. So how can we make this a musical commons? Use music as a glue that brings people together. And do something where we don't just mean that you just go straight across the island, but that you stop and we bring people into the island. How can we make this island be like a reef? In the sea, you have a reef full of life. How can we make this be like a social sponge that isn't just one thing, but many things? At the moment, there is a performance hall and a food and drink and a multi-purpose hall, but the views out are just so phenomenal, north, south, east and west. But this road completely splits it in half. It's like a broken Easter egg split down the middle. So for us, gluing these two sides together is so important. So we were looking at this connection. At the moment, as the previous speaker spoke about, millions of people every year go across, and most don't even notice that they even were on a bridge. They even went on it, that they went across an island. So how can we pull that together? And so what we're looking at is this figure of 8. We've got an amazing space here of the forest, and we have the courtyard here, spaces around the spaces that have been built already. So our idea is to focus on that essence of soul, which is water, mountains. That's how the city began. But try to make the heart of the city something that people don't run away from when you want to relax. When you think of New York, Central Park is one of the best pieces of nature you can find for 100 miles. So how do you make the heart, this Nodeul island, actually be the place you escape to connect with people, but even possibly have an urban hike, but use music as the generator and the something that drives that to happen. So when we look at the sound wave, and then we also look at the sophistication of the silhouettes of the mountains, we believe these two things go together. So our project is called Soundscape, and it's about trying to see whether we can bring those things together and create a landscape that creates all these new spaces and brings people up and makes dedicated spaces that are always alive for many of these functions, and integrates nature for the emotion to stitch this together. And the geometry is all based around the same square geometry that's there in the existing performance spaces that were built. And we're just using that same geometry to make this figure of 8. But this is made out of 7 areas. Like you have the 7 mountains of 7 mountain ranges of Seoul, there are 7 of almost like stepping stones, as one of the speakers spoke before, which can each have space. So we're looking at making 9,000 square meters of additional space. So whether that's immersive exhibition space for sound art, whether that's a K-pop experience space, whether that's karaoke and fine dining, classical music, total silence, musical cafes. The other thing that a number of the other speakers have spoken about is the edge. The edge of this island feels too sterile. It doesn't feel like it was designed for the human connection to water. So we're looking at activating that, breaking that line as much as we can. And this will be, the journey we would go on here is to try to find all the different kinds of relationship to water that you can have. And some of the previous speakers have spoken about that. Whether that's floating swimming pools, spaces for boats, rocky edges that come down, beach, art spaces, the best restaurant you could possibly be in for sunset. So this is our project. It 3-dimensionalizes those squares and lifts those up to make an integrated space. But a key thing to us is to try to make somewhere enticing, something that you can go back to not once or twice, but go back hopefully hundreds of times and discover new things when you do. And rather than trying to connect it more and make it part of the rest of the city, the beauty of an island is it gives you permission for it to be a special, extraordinary, unusual, different space. So we believe it's so important that we do go across the road, so that even if you're a car, ignoring the island, driving through, you feel just a moment of emotion in your day, even if you're just commuting to work or coming back. But we want people to sort of not know what they're looking at, need to explore more, and ask themselves questions. What is this? So as you can see, this is made with all the edge of the island has all these integrated facilities, but the underside of these rectangular leaves is mirror polished. So when you look up and when you're underneath, you see the life reflected and amplified of everyone who's there walking around and being and experiencing, and it also makes spaces for performance. So by lifting these, now we had 8 weeks, so maybe this is a bit taller than I think we should do it. It's still, the point is that this can make spaces at differing heights for more intimate performance spaces or busking, informal things, as well as grander spaces. And this is a 1.5 kilometer walkway that you can take around this. And it's fully accessible on all the main route around this. So there are 12 elevators that can lift people up, and then you can walk around and at 1 in 20, which is a wheelchair accessible route that connects it all together. And we're trying to very deliberately frame these main spaces. So we're framing this courtyard, which is where the main building spaces are, and then we're making a gateway for the drivers as you arrive and go across. And then on the other side, we're framing the forest. And as you can see, the geometry is based on the existing elements within the island. But we're designing for the human experience, looking in elevation at the project, rather than trying to design the project to be looked at from the sky. And each of those 7 clusters are connected by bridges. So you have a moment where you then go and link from one to the next. And this nature is deliberately trying to be almost the condensing of Seoul's landscape, bringing it together. And in New York, we've built a park on the river. And New York is very similar, actually, to Seoul. It's only 1 or 2 degrees different. And we have a lot of experience at doing planting. And because we're building this new and it isn't an existing structure, we can integrate nature in special, extraordinary ways. So even though this is big, it has many small spaces. We're designing this to be the most humanized possible, both big and small, because I think that's what tends to be missing in the urban world around us. And also, you want moments for that intimacy where you can just be in the best possible place in Seoul for the sunset. But the job of these leaves is also to frame the existing things and make smaller, intimate spaces that can work. So it's helping to amplify the existing facilities that have been built on the site at the moment. But its job is to be a lantern at the same time and an invitation to everybody, in a way like, I guess, a people's palace, but for everybody, not just for an elite group. And as you can see, that form I just showed, inside are all of these different spaces. Now, we could have more, we could have less, we could have none of those, but those are deliberately there to activate. In New York, there is a park that is raised, and that was using an existing structure. And they're not able to build program into that, whereas we have the ability, because there is nothing, that we could make extraordinary functionality in there. So when we look at what we could put in, the possibilities in some of these functions into these areas are amazing, because we can build in spaces that connect with landscape. We can build unusual shapes of spaces as a recording space or performing space. So whenever you explore, there's always something interesting going on. And spaces that look out back at the city and look out back at the landscape, we can bring light into those spaces in very special ways. How open they are, how closed they are, we can work that out together. But equally, we think silence is really important. And there are these things called anechoic chambers. And the idea that we could make total silence space, but then put glass so that you can look down into the forest or into the landscape. But equally, it's about spaces for co-creating. Ideally, we will speak and consult with hundreds of organizations in Seoul and ask them, what do you need? What is missing in what you do? And how can we, Nodeul Island, be a place that amplifies what you do and what you do and what you do and what you do? So this is this 1.5 kilometer route that you can take. And you can see how it integrates across the whole of the island. And we could make it as wide or as thin as we want. And this is how we will use elevators to come up, but this will also structurally stiffen the whole thing so that we don't need big triangles everywhere. And by having a 1 in 20 route, we have experience from New York of how a 1 in 20 route, you can lift people quite a bit once you're at that height. So there's a project with the spaces on top, but there are also all the spaces, other spaces around outside. And we think the potential for almost like the Hollywood Bowl, a space where maybe twice a year there's a big concert, and this is framed and looking towards the west. And this as a performance lawn with stairs down. One of the other teams suggested something similar. But we think this reflective underside will make, whenever you're there, you'll know there's nowhere else like this in the world. And just simple spaces, looking out at the city. The best place you could possibly want to have a swim at whichever time of year, if this is a floating pool or built into wild waters, natural springs. And we also think that maybe some of the facilities that are on the ground maybe are expanded. So we can choose whether we want to extend those up and to work with. There's a chemistry between the existing and the spirit of existing, which is very simple, and the sort of special element that brings it together. And we think that the reflective underside creates an amplification of the nature on the ground. So even if we develop the design, take away all the plants on the top, we still think we will have a special chemistry with the planting that's on the bottom, which also needs improving. And at night for festivals, and every evening should feel like a little bit of a festival. People love it in cold as well, or warm, but to be somewhere which works well with lighting is so important. We think that we shouldn't join this to the land on each side, but we also think that we shouldn't spend a fortune building a heroic, incredible bridge, because our worry is to make the magic of the island less. If it's too magic, all these other things. So we think we should try instead to use the existing infrastructure. We do need to give good pedestrian access and cyclist access. But in New York, the High Line that I spoke about earlier is using an existing structure and making it special. So we already have these arches and structure on the north underneath the bridge. And on the south, we have these arches and this gap between. So it seems to us that to have a covered bridge, just using the existing, is environmentally better. A better use to use the structure that exists at the moment and make something that is a complement to the main island, but grows your anticipation even more. And then if we suspend a bridge link between the arches, again, that should be a bit so that it's fun to walk there. We've got to get more people walking. It's astonishing, those crazy big roads you have on the north and south, cutting away, as Brian said, the water from the city. So we've got to get people walking and feeling they are the priority. And when people arrive by vehicle, which must also be an option, we need to find a way to protect them from the main road so that there's a nice way to pull in. We don't want to put parking on the island. If we start putting parking on the island, where will we end? We need to make it the best place to be dropped off or walk or cycle. So that how we design that, we need to be mindful of. So finally, going around the outside of the island, looking at how we activate the water, we just think it's really about the chemistry of something unusual that is the glue holding the island together, but then the informality of everything that can happen around the edge. And that possibility in the summer of creating a beach on the eastern end of the island, and framing at the eastern end the forest that's there at the moment, but then that eastern beach suddenly becomes the best ice skating rink in Seoul at the same time, framed like you're the hero in the middle of the river. We love the river because the river becomes like a picture frame. It frames the magic of an island. And so we think increasing the intensity of this extraordinary island is so important. And then at night in the concert spaces, the ability with something that you can uplight to create a different chemistry is really important. So this is my last slide, and one gesture I learned is hato hato when I was here that I'd never heard of before I came to Seoul. But in the world, you are, you know, if you asked me 10 years ago about Korea, I didn't know, what's Korea? Like, Seoul, what's that? No, there's China and there's Japan, what's Korea? And now, Korea is famous around the world for unusual reasons, for your incredible K-pop, for your incredible barbecues, for the most brilliant film and drama. But when you come here, your city, your capital city, was built in a utilitarian way. The bridges, you don't have beautiful bridges, you have utilitarian functions around everywhere. And it needs, I believe, you need an intensity of something that makes visible properly, along together with your DDP project, which is incredible, visible your incredible bonkers eccentricity that exists here. And we would love to work with you to co-create something that manifested that. So thank you very much.
네, 큰 박수 부탁드립니다. 이렇게 열정적으로.
Thank you very much for that passionate presentation. listening to your proposal, I was able to feel proud that we have become really a city to be reckoned with on a global stage. So thank you for that. Last but not least, I would like to invite from the System Lab, Mr. Kim Chan-jung, for the final presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kim Chan-jung, as introduced. While I was preparing for this project, I had a lot of thoughts, and I listened to all the different design proposals with a lot of interest, and it's given me a lot of ideas. In the past, when Korea was still a poor country and economically less developed, we talked about living, working, sleeping, and today we are thinking about new concepts. We want to enjoy life more, and we are thinking about how to enjoy our life and not just survive. That is culture, that is art, and that is play. When I received this project, I was completely burned out, and I was wondering whether I would be able to do it or not. But I wanted to play, and that's the mind frame I had when I started this project. And Nodeul ring story is what I would like to introduce, and Nodeul ring is the way I wanted to play with Nodeul Island. So this is going to be my presentation agenda. Many people have already talked about the history of Nodeul Island, so I won't focus too much on that. But our ancestors used to enjoy life next to the water. They drank in the boats and they wrote poems next to the water. That was the tradition. And many of our ancestors played in the sand, in the beaches, on Nodeul Island in the past. What do we need to do now? Other teams have created Nodeul Island in an amazing way, but I focused on how we should access Nodeul Island. Here you see London Eye in London, and as you can see, London Eye's shadow is on the River Thames. And there are different ways to experience the waterfront space, and I thought about how we could do that on Nodeul Island. As you know, we have an area where the water is shallow and another area where the waters are deep. So in the deep areas, we need to operate the boats. And if we connect the shallow waters, then we can create a geometrical shape. And this is the shape. Well, Hechi is saying, please remember the shape of Nodeul Island. So remember it for later. And I wanted to look at the geometry of Nodeul Island. And I don't know whether it was by chance or not, but from the Han River bank up to Nodeul Island, it was just the right distance. And I traced this, and I lifted this, and I twisted this, and I rotated this, and I imposed this structure on top of Nodeul Island. And what I thought was very interesting was that the river was very wide, and I wanted to create a lake on top of the river. And the concept of Nodeul ring is, I think, related to the concept of creating another lake on top of the river. So the overall length is 1.4 kilometers, And 1.4 kilometers is not especially meaningful, but from the Han River bank up to the Nodeul ring, we start from shallow waters and it goes up, and it goes up slowly up to 37 meters in height. So we have the Nodeul Madang and Nodeul Forest, the Mengkongi Forest that is there, and we want to put the ring inside Nodeul Lake, and we have the terminal where we can get on the different capsules, and we create one loop through the ring. And if we look at the structure of the pillars, the bridges that are built over the Han River, we have to take into consideration the speed of the water and the water flow. And we have to enable these structures to bear the stress. And we have a 1/20th slope, and you see some pink dots on the slide, and the pink dots are our capsules. And we leave from the Han River bank, we depart from the Han River bank to ride on the capsules. And here we have a stepping stone island, a very small stepping stone island. And its function is to bring back the waterfront area closer to the water. And because the water flow is very swift and rapid, sometimes we have drifting things that drift with the flood water. And we want this stepping stone to work as a buffer to filter out these drifting waste. And if possible, we want to keep the existing facilities as is. That was the original idea. And here you can see the existing facilities. Right now, they're not very attractive. But the rooftop observatory, maybe if we do some gardening and planting, then maybe those who are on top may get a nicer view of the bottom if we zone it differently and plant the area differently. Now I'd like to talk about the capsule. Korea is a culture where rooms are very important. As you know, our ancestors always enjoyed the landscape and the scenery through windows and doors in this way. And it was part of their everyday life. And scholars also enjoyed the scenery in this way when they were studying. Of course, we can enjoy our time in a crowd, mingling with people together, but I wanted to give a private space to the citizens of Seoul. Inside the capsule, you can enjoy different views of Seoul during the firework festival, when it snows in Seoul, and it only moves on one side, so it doesn't go in full circle, so you have to take the capsule several times to enjoy different views. And you can rent the capsule for a specific time in order to enjoy the view. When you're burned out, I think you'll feel better after riding on this capsule. And I also imagined somebody proposing in this capsule. If we have 24 people in one capsule, that would be impossible. Maybe one person or a small number of people, maybe they could enjoy a trip around Hangang River in this very private capsule. And I think that would create a new space for the citizens of Seoul. And the citizens of Seoul will not only be able to have a view on Nodeul Island, but have an overall view of Seoul city in general. We talked about music a while ago, but the capsule can work as a karaoke, not a sauna maybe, but people can study in it, and people can even propose to their loved ones in it. And maybe with a Bluetooth device, the capsules can be connected together, and doing one round takes about 30 minutes, and I'm thinking maybe 15 minutes will be good. And maybe I can create bigger capsules for a family of 8, and it will be autonomous, which means when there are a lot of people, when there's a crowd, the capsules will operate at shorter intervals, and when traffic is slow, then the capsule will operate autonomously according to the number of capsules that are in operation. So here, the inside and outside structure is different. So it's like a gate structure, and it's a concept of the gateway. And with regard to the floor plan, we have a main lounge and the ticketing area near the bank, and you can walk to this area too. And if you go to the second floor, that's the area where you can take the capsule ring, and we'll have a smart system that will provide the operational intervals. Right now, we have 100 capsules that we have prepared, and on the upper level, we have a lounge cafe, and we can order a latte or American coffee, and maybe even enjoy a picnic. And inside, people can work in one circle, and externally, we have a moving wall, and it's a dual system that will be operating at the same time. And externally, as I told you before, we have a 360-degree angle, and you can walk in this area. And you have an open area here, but the sunlight doesn't hit you directly, and we can control the lighting inside, and we will have a moving projector that will move at 360 degrees so that we can shoot interactive art on these walls for the users and visitors. This is what I explained to you before. And when you move to the top, you can get off the elevator, and there is a sunset observatory. And here, the walking space becomes wider, so maybe we could put a gallery in there. And when you go up, there's a sunset observatory where you can enjoy the sunset. This is the plan. And there is an elevator and emergency staircases that are connected to the cafe inside the structures. And at the end of this structure, people will come out. This is the existing Nodeul Madang, and on top we will have the capsule ring. People on top will be able to look down. And so we tried to find a connection between the existing facilities and the new designs that we were proposing. These are the different scenes that we captured. Yes, the sunset is very red. And now let's look at this concept of Nodeul Lake. So we wanted to use modulated barges in order to do different events, concerts inside. Inside the water area, inside the ring, we could hold different concerts and performances. And the bank works as a stand so that we can have different water experiences inside the ring. We can imagine creating a swimming pool inside the ring. And with a simple geometry, I imagined what we could do inside the island. And I think that whatever idea we implement, it will blend in very naturally with the existing facilities. The important thing is to try to find a way to divide the sky, the view of the sky from this place. So we have people on top who are looking down, but we have people who are on the ground floor who are looking up. And I mean, even if you don't have a meaningful conversation, you can catch the eye of the other person and smile at each other. And maybe this is one way of communicating inside a city. And we said, if these two areas are too far, maybe people will not be able to kiss each other, but maybe people don't want to kiss each other. I mean, that was a joke that we had between ourselves. So this is how we imagined using the space. So it's not an amphitheater or a concert hall, but inside this water space, we can set up this stage, water stage, and have performances and have events. So this is how everything is connected. And on the bottom, we have islands that work as a stepping stone. And these islands that work as stepping stones, we worked with construction material that we got from buildings that were demolished in Seoul. So we recycled the material to build these stepping stone islands. This is how different activities can be connected. And we have external and internal part that provide a dual modal system. We can use the stepping stone island to go up the ring, and we can use the capsule to enter into the island. So we can access the island through different ways. So we started with the Nodeul ring, and we can develop many different programs and activities around the Nodeul ring. And I think Nodeul Island and the adjacent areas of Nodeul Island will be revived according to the activities and programs that we plan. I prepared a 2-minute video, and the video is a bit silly, so I ask for your understanding. This video is trying to explain how we want Nodeul Island to be appreciated by the citizens of Seoul. So it's not very architectural or serious, but I hope you enjoy it. 1753. It's now? What do you mean now? We have the answer to how to connect everything together. 1953? Oh, it's now. When your galaxy and my galaxy will meet. Where are you going, Dad? Hurry, hurry. We have to go now. We have to go to the place where the past, present, and future will be connected.
Right now.
What's this? What are you doing? What are you doing with your fingers? Mom, Dad is acting strangely. Everyone, make a heart with your fingers. We have to be of one mind to connect. It's done. It's done. We are connected. Another galaxy. As the Earth rotates in orbit, everything rotates around the galaxy. For a moment, we finally connected with a magical world. This is the miracle on the River Han. We have become one here at Nodeul Island. A connected landmark that is like a galaxy created with Seoul citizens. The story of Nodeul Island that connects us to Seoul's future.
Thank you. Warm round of applause to our presenter. So that brings us to the end of all of the 7 presentations. Once again, big applause to Mr. Kim Chang-jung, our last presenter of the day. Well, thank you. So that has been 7 very distinct, creative and innovative presentations delivered by our distinguished 7 architects. I liked every one of it. So I feel that it would be best if we could bring different elements and bring about a synergy across all of these ideas. Thank you very much once again to our 7 very distinguished architects. And you will also be making that choice before you leave. But before I close today's program, I'm going to invite Architect-in-Chief Kang Byung-gun from the Seoul Metropolitan Government. Please welcome him with a warm round of applause. It's been 7 ideas and bringing the elements of the 7 ideas and making that into and selecting one rather than doing that. I think that we should have 7 different islands on the Han River where we would represent and embody these creative and innovative ideas that was shared today. Just by listening to these proposals, I'm sure you've been very much inspired. It's been a very interesting 2.5 hours today. And we asked our architects to share with us their creative ideas with no bounds. And I take this opportunity to extend my appreciation to all of the participating architects making part of the Seoul Cities Initiative. The fact that we are different presents immense amount of opportunities, and that is what we experienced in this very room. The fact that we are different does not mean we are in conflict with one another. As Mr. Kim said, he talked about the new galaxy. If we can't make things right here in this real world, we could maybe look up towards the galaxy. The fact that we are different brings abundance of opportunities. Every single idea that was shared by all of our architects today are of great meaning and value. So I thank you for that. Starting today, the citizens of Seoul will consider these different ideas. And I know that it's not just the first time for the Seoul citizens to be shared these ideas, but also across the architects. you've seen each other's work for the first time, and these different proposals and presentations actually show these ideas that will come into play as we transform the Nodeul island. We originally planned on a question session, 20-30 minutes, but we have our architects who have to catch a flight this evening. So I'm regretful to say that we won't be able to entertain questions. But as Mayor Oh has mentioned, in the lobby of the Seoul City Hall, as well as at the nearby exhibition SHUA, as well as at the Nodeul Island, in these 3 locations, we will be exhibiting all of the 3 Nodeul Island ideas, based on which we will collect different feedback and opinions and views of the citizens of Seoul. So for those of you who have any burning questions relating to the presented ideas, please make sure you leave your comments in these locations. And also, I look forward to your support and encouragement. Thank you very much for staying with us until the very end. And thank you very much to our distinguished architects for their enthusiasm on behalf of the city and on behalf of Mayor Oh. He actually came back again to be with us. So thank you very much, everyone. So the architect-in-chief has given us his closing remarks, and during the previous presentation, while the presentation was being made, Mayor Oh came back. So we'd like to invite him once again for the final closing remarks.
Did you enjoy the forum? We are creating the future of Seoul together. So it's a lot of fun, isn't it? It was so interesting to listen to our 7 architects, and we had access to their wild imagination and great minds. We are going to create Seoul's future by revitalizing Nodeul Island. Do you understand why I have returned as a mayor of Seoul again? It's because it's so much fun, and I enjoy the work that we are doing. As mentioned before, each idea that was proposed by the architects are valuable. They can be modified, slightly modified, and adopted. I think that international architects are less familiar with Korea's climate situation, the flood situation. So in their presentation, you may have felt that it was not appropriate for Korea, but it doesn't matter, because all we need to do is tweak it a little bit and adopt it to our situation. I met with the architects before the forum, and we had a discussion. And last week, I listened to the presentations from the Korean architects. We will try to develop the ideas further, and we ask for your participation and engagement so that we can come up with a great idea. All of these great ideas will not only benefit Nodeul Island, but will be able to inspire and give much insight to other projects in Seoul. And I want to continue the journey. That is a lot of fun that I enjoy with all of you in the future. It's dinner time, so I will end here.
Thank you very much once again, ladies and gentlemen. This brings us to the end of today's forum. Before I let you go, let me also explain how you could vote on your favorite idea. So please have your phone scan this QR code. This will lead you to a URL link. Out of the 7 ideas that you've seen today, you can choose 2 ideas. I'm sure you must have loved every one of it, but please make sure you choose only 2. So Also, when you walk out in the hall, there's a banner and there's also a QR code there, so you can make use of that as well. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. My name was Yu Cherin. Goodbye.
네, 모두 조심히 돌아가세요. 여러분 나가실 때 그 통역 받으신 거 나가시면서 꼭 반납해 주셔야 됩니다. 수신기 가지고 가지 마시고 반납 꼭 부탁드리겠습니다. 조심히 돌아가세요.